Okay. So the topic bread of life, interestingly, in the experience of Jesus, has to do a lot as well with heart and a radical experience of heart. So I thought what we could do for the opening meditation is to do some breath exercises that detox and oxygenate the blood for the heart so that our hearts can be even more open to where we go for our exploration today. Now, two of the really popular ones that we've done that we're not going to do tonight because we've done them and you're probably familiar is Kapalabhati, which is fire breath, is very powerful for especially cleansing the blood. That's where you pump from your diaphragm in a rhythmic way for a certain amount of time with the breath. And it really pushes the blood to release toxins and opens up the pathways for oxygen in the blood. And the other is alternate nostril breathing, which we've done many times and you're familiar with. So I wanted to do something that would be just a little bit different, just to have variety. And we're going to begin by simply closing one nostril and only breathing through the open nostril if you're not too stuffed up. If you're stuffed up, just do what you can and breathe as much as you can through the nose, but go ahead and breathe through the mouth. But you're going to go ahead and the nostril that's open, you're going to do a mudra. So you're going to, and we're circulating energy. You're going to take the thumb and the pointer finger, and you're going to put these fingers tight together and then you're going to key up the palm out like this. And you can put it down on your lap, but that's what it looks like since you can't see me. That's for the nostril that's open. And the nostril that's closed, you're going to simply let the fingers be together like this and close the nostril. Let this be like an antenna like this. And again, it's all an energy circulation that we're doing. Okay, so we'll start. You can mirror me. I won't say left or right, or you can do the nostril that I'm doing. I'll just say switch. So start with one nostril. Let's get into position. Okay, and then don't start the breathing. Just go ahead and close your eyes, breathing through the mouth. And before we begin our breath only through the nose, offer a moment of silent presence to your heart. How is your heart today? And with this presence for how your heart and whatever inner states you're aware of, in the presence of those, we begin our breath breathing through the open nostril, inhaling, holding, exhaling, inhaling, holding, exhaling, inhaling, holding, exhaling, inhaling, holding, exhaling, inhaling, holding, exhaling. Continue without my prompts. Keep focused. One more full breath. And once you've completed, release the nostril and let both hands be in the mudra with the pointer finger and the thumb touching and the other three fingers tightly pressed together and extended. Both hands with palms facing upward on the knees or on the lap. Letting the heart be soft, letting your inward state, whatever you're thinking or feeling or experiencing, be a part of this opening practice. All is welcome here. And now we go to the other side, bringing the thumb to close the nostril and the fingers all pressed together, facing upward like an antenna, and keeping the hand of the open nostril in the mudra position, and observing once again your inner state and allowing the inner state to be here. There is no need for the mind to be quiet. There is no need for the heart to feel only certain things. There is no need for control on any level of your inner state. Only allowing of what is to be. And we begin the formal breath, inhaling through the open nostril. Hold and exhale. Inhaling through the open nostril. Hold and exhale. Inhale through the open nostril. Hold And exhale. Inhale through the open nostril. Hold and exhale. Inhale, hold, and exhale. Inhale, hold, and exhale. Inhale, hold, and exhale. Continue on your own without prompts. One more full breath. After the exhale, release the hand. Bring both hands into the mudra. And very lightly pull the shoulders back to open the heart cavity and lift the head ever so slightly upward as though you're greeting the morning sun. And notice what is happening within you, in your heart, in your mind, in your body. What are your varying inner states that are alive and moving within you? And then release the mudra and bring the palms together in front of the heart. And bow the head towards the fingers. And open the eyes with namaste. 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 Sorry, Larry. Our eyes were closed meditating. But hopefully you felt that from afar. Sorry about that. So with the reflection I want to lay out here with Bread of Life, it's not intended to be a theological or dogmatic presentation. I'm going to lean into a doctrine that's held within the Orthodox and Catholic traditions of Christianity called transubstantiation, but I'm not doing it to create a dogma or to create an idea at all. It's not to create a position for or against. It's to allow this experience of this passage in the Gospel of John, chapter 6. It's allow us to get a little bit of an entry point to broaden ourselves in relation to this concept of bread of life. It's incredibly provocative if you think about it in a very practical way. That here's a human being saying, "I am the bread of life." And this human being is saying something that has to do with this world and all worlds. Bread is sustenance in this world. Life is something we're experiencing in this three-dimensional reality. So this individual is allowing the God essence of their being to come into every part of their creative expression of beingness. That's very imminent. Bread of life is very imminent. It's one thing to say, I'm enlightened, or, I'm filled with wisdom, or I'm a channel of the divine, or I'm, and those are powerful things as well, really. But it can easily be acceptable because of our limited nature as a body. It can be a little more digestible to say, I'm an instrument of grace. It's quite another story to say, I am actually the bread of life. And what it's pointing to, the doors that it's opening to a grasp of what the God essence is worthy of a really deep reflection. And you don't get these statements in a lot of different traditions, but you do get it in the gospel. So I want to read a couple of the lines, and then I'm going to go into a little bit of some of the what came forward from some of the bread of life uh, uh, articulation that Jesus said, along with the Last Supper, of course, which we'll celebrate next Thursday together. So Jesus starts out in this chapter 6, verses 25 on. I'm not going to read the whole thing. People start following him because he multiplied the food. There was a need of food, and whatever happened, there was some kind of miracle. And they were following him because of the miracle, the external wow factor, which we all do because it's pretty amazing when we witness something that's really a great miracle. And then Jesus says, I tell you, you're not looking for me because you saw the signs, but because you ate the loaves and had your fill. Do not work for food that spoils, but for food that endures to eternal life, which the Son of Man will give you. And then they go on and they ask the people that are following him. So he says this, and that's pretty almost cryptic. They go on and they say, well, what signs will you give us? Here they've gotten all these signs and they're now following because they're so fascinated, but they're like, what signs will you tell us so we can believe that? So actually we can trust that, because that's a big thing to trust. And they refer to the Hebrews in the wilderness who were given manna, not in big storage quantities, but day by day they were given everything they needed. And they said to him, give us this kind of bread. And Jesus says this powerful phrase, I am the bread of life. I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry. Whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. And he's aware that most of the people there don't believe that. And that's a big thing to put out there to believe. So There's a little bit of grumbling because he said he was the bread that came down from heaven, and they compare him to his earthly living with Joseph and Mary. And Jesus says that they need to stop grumbling. And he says again, I am the bread of life. The one who believes has eternal life. Your ancestors ate the manna in the wilderness, yet they died. Here is the bread that comes from heaven. Eating it, you will never die. Whoever eats this bread will live forever. And then he says the big statement, this bread is my flesh, which I give for the life of the world. On this statement, many leave him, which would be understandable because it would be a deal breaker for any of us. What if you were before somebody who was very wise and a healer, and then they made statements like this? You would really have to think, wow, do I really believe that? Because he's drawing the line there. He's drawing the line. Do I believe that? And he turns to his friends and he says, do you want to leave too? And they say, where would we go? You have the words of eternal life. They resonated with what he said, right? They resonated with what he said. Now, this definitely has a lot of symbol and metaphor to it. But the symbol and metaphor is contained in form because life has form and bread has form. And it seems that what Jesus is giving insight into is that life itself is meant to be an experience that we are actually so awakened in the process that we are eating it, and our life is eaten by others. And with the blood alongside the bread and the blood, right? The body and the blood. With the blood, you get the same thing at the Last Supper. You get this body and you get this blood, but they're the same. He's just using two examples. And it's the same thing with the blood. As we awaken, our blood is the very blood of God, of source, of the uncreated. And we give our blood in not just in service, because service can be very tactical, but in the largest sense of gift of self. And we are open to the receiving of that. Now, where I want to take this a step further, which I think adds to its provocative nature, is getting into some of the miracles that attenuate this phrase of the body and blood of Christ with the bread and the wine. In the early Christian community, the use of the word bread, the being the living bread of Christ, is used numerous times. You have Ignatius of Antioch, who was martyred, and he said, now I'm finally being ground to be bread of Christ for Christ. And then when the story of Lawrence, who was a deacon in the church, and the Pope was being carried away to be killed, and Lawrence was following him, so sad because he loved the Pope. And the Pope said, don't worry, in 3 days, you're going to be sacrificed like I am. And Lawrence was told, because it was a time in where he was living where Christianity was being persecuted, to give all of the wealth of the church to the persecutors. And they were assuming all the gold candlesticks and all, because Christianity was becoming wealthy with its symbols and its rituals. And Lawrence brought the people out and he said, this is the wealth of the church. And of course, the persecutor was a bit upset with that and put Lawrence on a spit, like a rotisserie. And Lawrence was baked like bread over a rotisserie. And there's lots of funny things that go along with that too. But then through the ages, all the way up to today, we have experiences that once the Eucharist, and again, this is not to be dogmatic and it is not to make something right or wrong. It's simply one way of opening up of what we're talking about. Here you've got a group of people that collectively believe that when the Eucharistic rite happens, that the actual bread and the actual wine become the body and blood, soul and divinity of this person, Jesus, the fullness of the Christ essence. And that belief, which is actually a dogma, that belief is an expression of what actually happens over the years through many miracles that are Eucharistic. Even up to just recently, I was pulling up a few of them to share with you. And this brings us very closely to the heart, the focus of our series here. So I'm just going to share a couple examples because there are thousands and thousands of examples. And this is all couched within the kinds of rituals that believe that transubstantiation happens when the Eucharistic prayers are said and the words of the Last Supper are said. Take and eat, this is my body. Take and drink, this is my blood. Lanciano in Italy, around the 8th century, a priest was leading Mass and he began to recite the words of consecration. As he said, this is my body and this is my blood, the wine and bread turned into real human blood and flesh. The blood then coagulated into 5 globules, which represented the 5 wounds of Christ. In 1236, a priest doubted transubstantiation, was saying Mass. As he did the consecration, the host began bleeding onto the altar's liturgical cloth. The cloth still remains on display, and the tests that were done show that it is true blood. Santarém in Portugal in the 13th century, a woman was distressed and wanted to take the host from communion away instead of eating it herself. And when she left, she hid it in a napkin. And when she left, it began to bleed and her heart was broken open. And she realized that she was not trusting in God. In Cascia, Italy in 1313, a priest was preparing to visit a dying parishioner. Instead of putting a pyx in his prayer breviary, he placed a consecrated host instead. When he was there, he opens the breviary to find that the host has bled, staining both pages with blood. 1345 in Amsterdam, a Catholic nun had fallen ill. The family cast the Eucharist into the fire because she purged it because she was so ill. The next morning, someone looked into the fire and the host was in its original form. They retrieved the host and it remains where you can see it. In 1991, near the Marian Shrine in Batania, the priest broke the host into 4 sections. He consumed one piece, and shortly after, the remaining ones began to display a red spot that exuded a red substance. This, because of modern technology, could really be studied. And through hundreds of tests, it was confirmed that the red spot was blood of the AB group, not the group of blood, not the blood that the priest was. and it was determined to be taken from a living heart. In India in 2001, during adoration in St. Mary's Parish, 3 red stains appeared on the Eucharistic host. The red stains had arranged themselves to look like a man. Somebody took a picture of the host, which looks like the face of Jesus. In Mexico, 2006, another instance of the red substance. After testing the liquid, it was determined to be the blood of the AB group. 2010, it shows that it was fresh blood secreted. Fresh blood. Poland, 2013, same thing. Consecrated host had fallen to the floor. The reddish color appeared. The host contained striated tissue from a human heart that happened after consecration. And these are just a few examples that come to us from a community that holds a truth about something having to do with the bread of life. And the bread of life being the full heart of creation. Now, this doesn't mean that we need to believe transubstantiation. And this isn't a dialogue about that. It really doesn't have to do with that. Because I believe that we all have enough experience to know that where we energetically resonate and hold openness to truth, there is much more intelligence in the field than what we realize, and much more instant revelation and manifestation than what we realize. This is one of many, many examples of bread of life. So where I leave us with our, well, we can go anywhere with the bread of life, right? It would be nice to have anyone share what moves in your heart when you consider yourself as the bread of life, the bread of life as a accurate expression of what the eternal is about in coming into form. What are your thoughts on this? What implications are there? I mean, here in this one way of believing, you've got undeniable evidence happening around what some would consider is a cult belief. Now, I've experienced transubstantiation. So for me, those miracles are so natural and have been a part of my own life and path. It hasn't kept me as a Catholic. It hasn't needed to. But in our own way, what opens up for us within the heart of our spirituality? When we consider the thought that the God source within us is bringing us to understand that we are the bread of life, and that the anointedness of life is the bread that will yield eternal life. So there I leave a big open plate for our discussion. We turn the recording off.